Nobody talks about this phase. Not because it's rare, but because it's uncomfortable. Every profitable trader you admire has been here, quietly, long before the screenshots, the confidence, the calm execution. It starts after the beginner chaos ends. You already know the basics. You've watched the videos. You've backtested strategies. You've even had a few wins that made you think, I might actually be good at this. And then, something changes. Your trades don't feel random anymore, but they don't feel right either. You're not blowing accounts, but you're not growing them. You're doing everything correctly, yet the results refuse to move. This is the phase that messes with your head. Because now, losing hurts differently. It's no longer ignorance, it's confusion. You don't know what you're doing wrong, and that's the worst part. You start overthinking entries you once took without fear. You hesitate, then watch price move without you. You enter late, then blame yourself for being emotional. You follow your rules, and still feel disappointed. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But inside, this phase is loud. You question your strategy. You question your psychology. You question whether consistency is even real, or just something people say after they make it. This is where most traders secretly quit. Not because trading is impossible, but because this phase offers no dopamine. No hype. No massive wins. No dramatic losses to learn from. Just silence, repetition, and doubt. Yet this phase is doing something important. It's stripping away your illusions. It's killing your need to be right. It's forcing you to face how you actually behave under uncertainty, not how you think you behave. You don't feel like a beginner anymore. But you don't feel like a trader either. You feel stuck in between. And here's the truth nobody says out loud. This phase isn't a problem. It's the gate. Every trader who makes it through profitability passes here, slowly, quietly, and often alone. If you're in this phase right now, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means the market has stopped teaching you lessons loudly. And started teaching you lessons that only patience can hear. And what you do here, when nothing feels rewarding, determines whether you ever trade with real confidence again. 1. When trading stops feeling exciting. The first sign of this phase isn't failure. It's silence. You wake up one day and realize trading doesn't feel exciting anymore. Not scary. Not thrilling. Just flat. You open your charts the same way you always do. Same pairs. Same sessions. Same rules you promised yourself you'd follow. But the emotional rush that used to come with clicking buy or sell is gone. And that scares you more than losses ever did. Before, every trade felt important. Every candle felt personal. Every win felt like proof you were special, and every loss felt like the market was attacking you. Now, you don't feel much at all. You wait for setups longer than usual. You stare at price, wondering if you're becoming lazy or disciplined. You close trades and don't even check the P&L right away. At first, you think this is growth. This must be maturity, you tell yourself. This is what pros feel like. But then the doubt creeps in. Because your account isn't exploding. Your results aren't dramatic. Your progress doesn't look impressive enough to talk about. So your mind starts whispering dangerous questions. What if I lost my edge? What if I'm just getting worse? What if I was never good, just lucky? You scroll through social media and see traders celebrating massive days, flashy entries, perfect timing. Meanwhile, your week ends slightly green, or slightly red, or exactly break even. Nothing to brag about. Nothing to cry about either. Just normal. And normal feels wrong when you came to trading for freedom, excitement, and fast results. This is where impatience tries to sneak back in. You consider tweaking rules that were working. You think about switching strategies, not because yours failed, but because it's boring. You miss the emotional highs, even though they were destroying you before. What nobody tells you is this. This emotional flatline isn't a setback. It's withdrawal. Your brain is detoxing from chaos. The market is no longer feeding you adrenaline, and your ego doesn't know what to do without it. So it looks for problems that aren't there. It invents urgency. It tempts you to self-sabotage just to feel something again. Most traders don't fail here because they lose money. They fail because they can't sit with neutrality. They mistake calm for stagnation. They confuse boredom with failure. But this quiet moment, when trading feels almost uneventful, is the first time you're no longer gambling with emotions. You just don't realize it yet. And what you choose to do next, chase excitement or respect the silence, quietly decides whether you ever move forward from here. 2. The war inside your head. This is the part where trading turns inward. The charts haven't changed. Your strategy hasn't collapsed. But your mind becomes the loudest thing in the room. You start noticing thoughts you didn't know were there. Every setup triggers a debate. Not with the market, with yourself. Is this really my setup? Am I being patient, or just scared? What if this one works and I miss it again? Before, you either jumped in or stayed out. Now, every decision feels heavier, because you know enough to see both outcomes clearly. You can visualize the trade winning. You can visualize it failing. And that awareness freezes you. So you hesitate. You wait for more confirmation that never comes. You enter late, trying to reduce uncertainty. You move stops to feel safe, then watch price tag them perfectly before running. Losses hit differently here. They don't feel like mistakes anymore. They feel personal. Not because you broke rules, but because you followed them and still lost. That's when the real mental friction begins. You replay trades in your head, not to learn, but to search for certainty. You ask yourself what the perfect trader would have done in that exact moment. And that imagined trader always seems calmer, sharper, better than you. So you try to become them. You suppress emotions. You force discipline. You tell yourself, just be robotic. But the more you fight your thoughts, the louder they get. Because this phase exposes something uncomfortable. You're no longer battling the market. You're battling your need for control. You want to know the outcome before you risk money. You want confidence without uncertainty. You want proof before commitment. But trading doesn't reward certainty. It rewards execution in uncertainty. This is where many traders unknowingly create their own inconsistency. Not by breaking rules, but by hesitating just enough to distort them. One missed trade turns into two. One late entry turns into worse risk. One adjusted stop turns into frustration. And slowly, you start distrusting yourself more than the strategy. Here's the hidden lesson of this phase. Confidence doesn't come from being right more often. It comes from accepting that hesitation is still a decision, usually the worst one. This mental war isn't a sign you're regressing. It's proof you're finally aware of what trading really demands. Not intelligence. Not prediction. But the ability to act while your mind is uncomfortable. And until you learn to coexist with that discomfort, every chart will feel like a negotiation you're always losing. 3. When discipline starts to feel heavy. There comes a moment in this phase where discipline stops feeling empowering and starts feeling exhausting. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're waiting for your setups. You're respecting risk. You're journaling trades, reviewing mistakes, staying consistent. Yet somehow, trading feels harder than when you were reckless. Back then, at least emotion gave you energy. Hope pushed you into trades. Fear pulled you out quickly. Now, everything requires restraint. You watch price move without you, and tell yourself it was the right decision. You take small losses, and force yourself not to react. You sit through slow days, reminding yourself that patience is part of the process. But internally, something resists. Your discipline feels fragile, like it needs constant effort to maintain. One bad trade drains you more than 5 used to. One missed opportunity replays in your head longer than it should. This is where traders start romanticizing their old selves. You remember when trading felt bold. When you trusted instincts more than rules. When you didn't hesitate so much. You forget the chaos that came with it. The blown weeks. The emotional spirals. The sleepless nights. All you remember is how alive you felt. So discipline begins to feel like a cage instead of protection. You ask yourself quiet questions you never say out loud. Am I too strict? Am I killing my edge by being careful? What if the best traders don't think this much? This is the dangerous midpoint of the phase. Because nothing is wrong, but everything feels heavy. You're carrying responsibility now. For your rules. For your results. For every decision you make or don't make. And responsibility removes the excuse of ignorance. You can't blame lack of knowledge anymore. You can't blame randomness as easily. You know better, which means every outcome feels like it reflects you. That weight slowly builds. And if you're not careful, discipline turns into pressure. Pressure turns into frustration. And frustration looks for relief. That's why many traders break rules after becoming disciplined, not before. Not because they forgot them, but because they got tired of carrying them. What this phase is teaching you isn't how to be stricter. It's how to make discipline lighter. How to stop treating every trade as a test of identity. How to let rules guide you without suffocating you. How to stay consistent without needing perfection. This part hurts because it forces a realization. Discipline isn't about control. It's about trust. And until you learn to trust your process without constantly policing yourself, discipline will always feel heavier than it needs to be. 4. The identity shift nobody warns you about. This is the part that sneaks up on you. No loss triggers it. No big mistake announces it. It shows up quietly, when you start questioning who you are as a trader. You used to describe yourself easily. I'm aggressive. I'm a scalper. I'm a risk taker. I trust my instincts. Those labels gave you confidence. They made decisions simple. But in this phase, those identities begin to crack. You hesitate to call yourself aggressive anymore, because aggression cost you. You don't fully trust instincts, because you've seen how biased they are. You don't even feel comfortable calling yourself disciplined, because discipline feels forced. So who are you now? You're not reckless. You're not confident in the old way. You're not fully calm either. You're undefined. And that's unsettling. Because identity used to carry you through uncertainty. Now, you have to stand without it. You notice it in small moments. When someone asks how trading is going, you pause before answering. When you explain your strategy, you downplay it. When you look at your results, you don't feel proud, but you don't feel ashamed either. You're no longer chasing validation. But you haven't replaced it with inner certainty yet. So you float. This is where comparison hits differently. You don't envy beginners anymore. You envy traders who look settled. The ones who seem comfortable in their style. The ones who don't explain themselves. The ones who execute without inner debate. You wonder what they have that you don't. What you don't realize is this. They passed through this same identity gap. This phase is dismantling the version of you that needed labels to feel secure. It's teaching you to operate without an ego costume. No, I'm the sniper. No, I'm the comeback trader. No dramatic self-image to protect. Just execution, without storytelling. That feels empty at first. Because ego used to motivate you. It gave losses meaning. It gave wins a narrative. Without it, trading feels quiet, almost anonymous. But this anonymity is necessary. You can't become consistent while defending an identity. Because the market doesn't care who you think you are. It only responds to behavior. This phase isn't taking something away from you. It's removing the need to prove anything. And once that need fades, you don't trade to confirm who you are anymore. You trade to do what the situation requires. That's when trading stops being personal. And starts becoming professional. 5. When results stop defining your mood. This is the strangest shift of the entire phase. One day, you close a losing trade. And your mood doesn't collapse. No anger. No spiral. No urge to make it back. Just a quiet acknowledgement, and you move on. At first, you don't trust it. You check yourself, wondering if you've become careless. If you've stopped caring. If this emotional distance means you're losing your edge. Because for so long, results controlled your state of mind. Green days made you confident. Red days made you question everything. Break-even days made you restless. Your emotions rose and fell with your equity curve. But in this phase, something disconnects. You still want to win, but you no longer need each trade to mean something. And that creates a new kind of discomfort. Because motivation used to come from emotion. From excitement. From fear. From urgency. Now, motivation has to come from commitment. You realize this during a streak. A few losses in a row, and you don't panic. A few wins in a row, and you don't celebrate. The emotional neutrality feels unnatural, almost wrong. You wonder. If results don't move me anymore, what will? This is where many traders misinterpret what's happening. They think they're becoming numb. They think passion is fading. They think they need more intensity to stay sharp. So they force emotion back in. They increase risk. They overtrade. They seek volatility, not because it fits their plan, but because it feels alive. And when that backfires, confusion returns. What's actually happening is simpler. Your nervous system is finally stabilizing. You're no longer wired to react to every outcome. Your brain is learning that one trade, or one day, doesn't define survival. That's why results lose emotional power. But here's the hidden challenge of this stage. Without emotional swings, discipline must be self-generated. No adrenaline to push you. No fear to stop you. Just choice. You must choose to execute when it's boring. Choose to stop when nothing is wrong. Choose to trust data over feeling. This is where trading becomes closer to work than gambling. Not miserable work, but quiet, unglamorous repetition. The kind that builds something slowly. And this is the moment many traders misunderstand. Detachment doesn't mean you care less. It means you care about the right things. Not the outcome of this trade, but the quality of your decisions over time. When results stop controlling your mood, they finally start reflecting your process instead of your emotions. And that's the shift that prepares you for consistency. Even if it doesn't feel rewarding yet. 6. The loneliest phase of trading. This is the phase where trading becomes quiet. And so does your world around it. You stop talking about trades as much. You stop posting results. You stop explaining what you're doing to people who don't understand it anyway. Not because you're hiding, but because words don't fit what you're experiencing. You're no longer struggling loudly. But you're not winning loudly either. You're simply working. And that feels lonely. Friends think you've calmed down. Some assume you quit. Others think nothing is happening. But something is happening, just not in a way that's visible. Your days are repetitive now. Same preparation. Same rules. Same risk. You notice how little external validation you get at this stage. No one claps for patience. No one sees restraint. No one celebrates a well-executed no-trade day. And that absence of recognition starts to test you. Because earlier in your journey, pain was shared. Losses were dramatic. Wins were exciting enough to talk about. Now, the process doesn't invite conversation. So doubt tries a different angle. If no one sees this, does it matter? If it's this quiet, am I even progressing? Why does success feel so invisible? This is the phase where many traders drift away, not out of failure, but out of isolation. They don't implode. They just slowly lose connection to the craft. Because humans are wired for feedback. And this phase gives almost none. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. You're learning to operate without an audience. You're trading without needing approval. Without needing sympathy. Without needing proof right now. And that's uncomfortable, because it removes pressure you didn't know was fueling you. The silence forces you to ask a deeper question. Would I still do this if no one ever noticed? If the answer is no, this phase will feel unbearable. If the answer is yes, something shifts. You begin to value internal signals over external noise. You start measuring success by execution, not reaction. You find satisfaction in things no one else can see. And slowly, the loneliness changes shape. It stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like focus. Because this is the phase where trading stops being a performance. No audience. No applause. No drama. Just you, the process, and time. And if you can stay present here, without excitement, without validation, without urgency, you're closer to real consistency than you've ever been before. 7. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself. This is the quiet turning point. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Almost easy to miss. It happens when you realize you're tired of working on yourself. For a long time, every problem in trading felt personal. Losses meant you lacked discipline. Mistakes meant you lacked control. Inconsistency meant something inside you was broken. So you tried to fix yourself. You optimized routines. You studied psychology. You tracked emotions. You analyzed behavior like a flaw that needed correction. But in this phase, that effort starts to feel unnecessary. Not because you've become perfect, but because you see something clearly for the first time. You were never broken. You were just human in an environment that punishes human instincts. The market didn't expose your weaknesses to shame you. It exposed them so you could stop fighting them. You notice the shift during a trade. You feel hesitation, and you don't panic. You feel fear, and you don't judge it. You feel temptation, and you don't act on it impulsively. You let the feeling exist, and you execute anyway. That's new. Before, emotions felt like enemies. Now, they're just signals. You stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking, given this feeling, what's the correct action? That single change removes a huge mental load. You no longer waste energy trying to become fearless. You stop chasing confidence. You stop forcing motivation. You accept that uncertainty will always feel uncomfortable, and that discomfort doesn't require correction. This is where many traders finally stabilize. Not because emotions disappear, but because emotions stop being in charge. You don't need the perfect mindset anymore. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need clarity before action. You just need rules, and respect for them. And something subtle happens when you stop self-correcting constantly. Your execution becomes smoother. Your decisions become cleaner. Your mistakes become less emotional. Because you're no longer reacting to who you think you should be. You're trading as you are, with structure. This phase teaches a hard truth. Growth doesn't always come from improvement. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. The market doesn't reward inner peace. It rewards consistent behavior. And once you stop trying to fix yourself every day, you finally give yourself the stability needed to trade consistently. That's when progress stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. 8. When you realize you've already crossed it. There's no finish line for this phase. No moment where you wake up and think, that's it. I made it. Instead, the realization comes quietly, almost accidentally. You review your journal one day and notice something strange. The mistakes aren't dramatic anymore. The emotions aren't loud. The swings aren't extreme. Your notes are boring. Execution, followed. Risk, respected. Outcome, acceptable. And for the first time, that doesn't disappoint you. You notice it during live trading too. You take a loss, and continue your day normally. You miss a trade, and don't chase it. You hit a clean entry, and don't feel the need to tell anyone. Not because you don't care, but because you trust what you're doing. That's when it hits you. You're no longer trying to become a trader. You're just trading. The questions that used to consume you have faded. Am I good enough? Do I have an edge? Will this ever work? They don't disappear completely. But they no longer control your behavior. And that's the difference. This phase didn't give you confidence in the loud way you expected. It didn't give you certainty. It didn't give you excitement. It gave you stability. You stopped measuring progress by single days. You stopped reacting to random outcomes. You stopped needing proof every week. You started thinking in months. In probabilities. in execution quality. Looking back, you realize why nobody talks about this phase. It doesn't make good screenshots. It doesn't sound impressive. It doesn't sell fast success. But it's the phase that makes everything else possible. Without it, wins inflate ego. Losses destroy discipline. Consistency stays out of reach. With it, trading becomes repeatable. Not easy. Not effortless. But grounded. This is where most profitable traders quietly arrive and stay. Not because they stopped growing, but because they built something solid enough to grow from. And if you're here now, or just passing through it, understand this. Nothing is wrong. You didn't lose your edge. You didn't lose your passion. You didn't stall. You crossed the phase where trading stops testing who you are and starts rewarding how you behave. And from here on, progress doesn't shout. It compounds. If this series felt uncomfortably familiar, that's not an accident. Because this phase doesn't happen to some traders. It happens to every trader who survives long enough to move past chaos. Most people never talk about it, not because it's rare, but because it doesn't look impressive from the outside. There's no viral moment here. No overnight breakthrough. No highlight reel. Just quiet decisions, repeated over time. And if you recognized yourself somewhere in these parts, the boredom, the doubt, the emotional flatline, the loneliness, the identity shift, understand this. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're being shaped. The market strips away everything that can't survive consistency. Ego. Urgency. Emotional dependency. And what remains is something most people never build: stability. That's why this phase feels invisible. But invisible progress is still progress. If this series helped you put words to something you couldn't explain before, let me know in the comments. I read them, and chances are, someone else needs to see they're not alone in this phase either. If you know a trader who's stuck, confused, or quietly doubting themselves, share this with them. Not for motivation, but for clarity. And if you want more honest trading psychology, real process talk, and content that doesn't sugarcoat the journey, make sure you subscribe. No hype. No shortcuts. Just the parts that actually matter. Because trading doesn't reward who talks the loudest. It rewards who stays long enough to understand what silence is teaching them. And if you're still here, still learning, still showing up, you're closer than you think.